Robert Benton is here. His films Places in the Heart and Kramer vs. Kramer have earned him 3 Oscars. His latest film, The Human Stain, stars Anthony Hopkins, Nicole Kidman, Gary Sinise, and Ed Harris. Here is the trailer for the film.
And act like a friend! Stop judging me and stop judging her!
Anthony Hopkins, Nicole Kidman, Ed Harris, Gary Sinise.
And when this stuff comes back so late in life, completely unexpected, it comes back with such force. There's something I need to tell you.
Tell me later.
I am pleased to welcome Robert Benton to this table for the first time. Is this the first time you've
It is
been
the
here?
first time.
You and I
Yeah.
see each
Well,
other
we see
around
each other
town all the time,
yeah.
so I didn't realize that. Congratulations.
Thank you.
This is a Philip Roth novel.
Yes.
Most people would say you can't make a movie out of The Human Stain. What made you want to do this and believe you could do this?
I am a great admirer of Philip Roth's work, and I think I've read most everything since Goodbye Columbus. And I think this last group of novels, beginning this trilogy, beginning with American Pastoral to I Married a Communist, ending with The Human Stain, is one of the great works of late 20th century American fiction.
Right.
And that said, I also think there are an enormous amount of novels that I can't see how to turn into a film. That they are too interior, there's not enough event, the voice itself is too stylized for me to understand how to do it. But in Human Stain, I loved the characters, I loved what it was about, I loved the rich complexity of the book, I loved the surprise in the book, that you begin to read this book, and you think you're watching one character. And over a third of the way through the book, you find that what you've been told is an absolute lie. And that was so intriguing and so interesting to do. Plus, any movie where one man asks another man to dance, where Anthony Hopkins can ask Gary Sinise to dance, right, won my heart.
Yes. And when you have a Nicole Kidman who's playing the woman who's a housekeeper.
Yes.
You know, and with all of her elegance and looks and how she who has this rather remarkable affair.
Yes.
With Anthony Hopkins, who's playing a professor. But tell me the story.
Okay.
And what was it about the story that intrigued you beyond the fact it was written by Philip Roth?
I think what interested me the most is it is a story of a man who walks away from his past, and his life is a kind of lie. He lives a life that's a lie, and in modern slang, he reinvents himself. And I think that it is a metaphor for how America at this time, how we invent ourselves in each generation. We turn our back on the past, and we gain freedom, and we lose our history, and we lose responsibility. And I think that notion that we have freedom, but freedom at an extraordinary cost, the tension between the right of the individual in this country to determine his or her own future against our responsibility to our community is one of, I think, the toughest issues in American life now.
Can I tell more about the story?
Sure,
I mean,
you can tell whatever you like.
This is the story of a guy who is in fact an African American. Mm-hmm. Nobody knows. Mm-hmm. He had embarrassed his mother because who was clearly, visibly African American, and wouldn't bring home people to meet her, and embarrassed her. But he covered it up for his own reasons. Became head of a college, a professor at a college, distinguished professor at a college. Finally, is in a terrible. It gets accused of racism.
Yes.
The ultimate irony.
Yeah.
Accused of racism because of a remark he made in a classroom, and then falls in love, has this affair with a housekeeper.
With a housekeeper, yeah.
Different, and then a writer, comes into their life,
and becomes a friend of Coleman Silk. This man, who had become increasingly alienated. He'd gone from being professor of classics, a dean of faculty at a prestigious college, to being an outcast in this community. And his wife has died
for making a racist remark.
Fired for making a supposed racist remark, which was not a racist remark. And his wife has died.
Right.
And this man meets a working class woman, played by Nicole Kidman, with an ex-husband, a Vietnam vet, who is stalking her and has threatened to kill her.
Played by Ed Harris.
Played by Ed Harris. And is a clear and present danger. And it is the story of that last love affair of Coleman Silk's against the first love affair that he has as a young man, which sets in motion.
Can I just tell that story? The first love affair ends up when the young woman that he's madly in love with goes home and meets the mother and then tells him on the way back she's not going to go through with it because she realizes he's an African American.
Yes. He has been passing.
Right.
And his one attempt to integrate those two parts of his life doesn't work. And he then turns his back on his family of birth and leaves them behind and passes as white for the rest of his life.
There was a story that I remember reading in the last 10 years, in fact, of a man who I think was a book review.
Yes. Anatole Broyard.
Yes.
For the New York Times. He was. Now, how much of this is based on Broyard or not, I do not know. But certainly it has informed.
That idea was what informed Philip Roth.
Yes, that idea was certainly present.
Because this is an elegant, distinguished man who nobody knew?
His wife knew, his children didn't know. Now, I'm getting all this. I'm a second-hand witness, and I'm a second-hand witness among artists and writers, which is a very unreliable second-hand witness.
Right.
But and I've also been told the Spooks incident actually happened at Princeton.
Or somebody said something like that.
Somebody said spooks, specifically the word spooks.
Right. And did not know the people they were talking about were, in that case, African American.
Yeah.
That's what happened in the movie.
And in fact, I had a conversation with the film critic Andrew Saris, who wrote in his column that at one point he made the same mistake by asking somebody if they were a spook, meaning a CIA agent.
Right.
And he was taken to task for that as a racist comment.
Casting.
Yes, sir.
Tell me, because some people have raised a question about this, as you well know.
Yes.
Miscast.
Right.
Great actors, great performances, miscast. Tell me why you cast first Hopkins, then Kidman. Harris is, I don't think they were referring to him, and certainly not to Sinise.
Yeah. First of all, I'm going to take it in two stages.
It has nothing to do with ability as an actor. It has to do with this role and, I assume, persona.
Well, here's the dilemma. In the novel, which is what I wanted to make a film of, you believe that Coleman Silk is white for over a third of the book. And I remember reading it and finding out that he was African American and stopping and thinking, wait a minute, this character that I have put my trust in I've just found out he's been lying to me. Now that does a wonderful thing. It's one of the reasons that I wanted to do it. It was a character unlike any other character.
Right.
And I therefore had to cast an actor who you would believe was white. There are a number of really great actors. There are a handful of really great actors. But Dustin Hoffman used to say there's acting and there's behavior, and you cannot act behavior. Mm-hmm. You cannot act wit. You cannot act a kind of erotic quality. Right. You cannot act. There's certain things you cannot act.
These are things people might call innate.
Innate. And that some people have them and some people don't.
Right.
There is a kind of capacity, there's an intelligence that Hopkins has that made me believe he was a classics professor. There is a kind of fire in him that could be rage. And I needed a man who had that quality and understood this character. And I needed a man who had that strength, who was at that age, had that capacity to be bigger than life. All of those things I firmly believe that Hopkins has. If I had cast this with an African American, you would have known from the beginning, and
Right.
that element in the Roth novel, which is to me critical,
Right, right.
would not have been there. I would have been making a documentary about a man passing.
Right.
And that didn't interest me. What was critical to the film was the actor Wentworth Miller, who plays the young Coleman
Right.
Silk.
Right. Who's
Because
getting huge praise for his
He is a
performance.
phenomenal actor, and we could not have made the film without him.
Right.
And he is biracial.
Right.
His father, I think, is African American. His mother is white. I may have that
Right.
reversed. He went to Princeton. He could have passed. He has not passed, but he could have passed.
Right.
And he acted for us as the path between the past and the present.
Right.
You move from Coleman Silk to this young man who you believe is a younger Coleman Silk.
Right.
They match extraordinarily well. Then later you see him in a love scene with a young girl, Stina, and you see them together naked.
Right.
And their skin is the same color.
Right.
And one is a little pinker, one is a little less pink, but it's the same color. And what I wanted to do is say that shading, it's a psychological thing as much as anything. And I think it was very important to me to construct it this way, and I cannot imagine another actor as good as Hopkins.
So
in this
nothing
role.
anybody says about miscast, you say, I can't imagine anybody else playing the role.
Yeah.
All right. Same thing with Nicole?
I believe that she is probably the most beautiful character actor alive today. If you look at
Most
what
beautiful
character actor alive today, if you look at her roles from Billy Bathgate to Far and Away to Die For to The Others to Moulin Rouge to a lovely film called Birthday Girl to The Hours to Human Stain and now to Cold Mountain, every one of them is a different role. Every one of them extends her range further each time. She never chooses the same role. She never goes back and repeats a role. She always, everything she does is to test herself, to risk testing herself and broadening the range. She has that ability to disappear into a role that a great character actor has.
And yet she's now a huge megastar, too.
She is a huge, but it's odd to have a megastar who, well, Tom Hanks is a megastar, and he's also a great character actor.
Right. Just to see them together, here is Anthony Hopkins and Nicole.
Thanks for the lift. Want to come in?
What's happening to him there? He lets her out, and all of a sudden, here's this woman who's quoting, thought's the enemy of action, or whatever the quote is.
Action is the enemy of thought.
Right. And
And
there's
he
a
lets
moment
her
she's
out.
gotten out, and he says what?
She says to him, "Come up to the room," and he says, "I've just been I haven't been this close to a woman since my wife died," and she says, "Look, if you're looking for sympathy, you've come to the wrong place. I don't do sympathy," and she gets out. And this is a great example of what two extraordinary actors can do with what is very simple dialogue. There are 4 lines of dialogue there, and they're wonderfully written by Nick Meyer, the screenwriter. But to watch what they do in between, that you see this man who had given up on life come back to life. You see this surprise, and that something in him changes there, and you see in her this woman who is so used to rejection. And I think that it's one of the most thrilling things about making a movie is watching great actors work together. I think, in all honesty, and I'm immensely proud of this movie, but this is a movie that belongs to the actors. Whether it's Nicole or Anthony or Wentworth or Jacinda or Ed Harris or Gary Sinise or Anna Devere Smith, the actors are just spectacularly good in this movie.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you very much.
It's great to have you. I hope you'll come back.
I would love to. Thank you very much.
The Human Stain, let me just tell you, it is now in theaters, directed by Robert Benton, starring Anthony Hopkins, Nicole Kidman, Ed Harris, and Gary Sinise. Thank you for joining us. See you next time.